Welcome back, gamers. Time for the next installment of Unit 3 lesson. It's going to be real short today. I'm talking about, I think it's slide 7, and it's called the Battle of Kursk. So, the way things went down in Russia since we left Stalingrad and the surrender at Stalingrad was that the Germans had basically just been kind of holding the line and falling back slowly, and the Russians moving forward on their gains they made in the south at Stalingrad, and the Germans decided that the place to make their stand and the place to turn the tide was in the center. So Army Group Center of Russia at a place called Kursk. The Russians had created a bulge in the line by moving too far forward in one spot, so that the Germans basically had him surrounded on three different sides. And the Germans decided that that was the best place to attack because they could just do their same old blitzkrieg tactics, and they could attack from the front, from the left, and from the right on the Russians, and pinch off this bulge of Russian defenses and just kind of carve up a chunk of the Russian army, take the wind out of their sails and slow them down, or so they thought. General Zhukov and General Konyev, the Russian commanders, had already got their orders from Stalin, follow up on the Battle of Stalingrad with a massive defeat of the Germans someplace else. And they thought, this is the perfect place. We already know what the Germans are going to do. The Germans are going to try to attack us because this is the obvious location. So they're going to put a bunch of fortifications, belts of anti-tank guns and ditches and minefields. There are like 6 or 7 layers of these belts, and they just basically set their army up to do nothing but be a massive shock absorber and absorb the Germans. They had a whole tank army kind of sitting back waiting, and wherever the Germans got bogged down and got stuck, well, then they would just counterattack. So this whole thing kicked off in the summer of 1943, the same time that Sicily's being invaded, the same time that the Allies are making their second front in Europe. The Germans launch this attack to bring some kind of victory for themselves, and it doesn't work out. It's the greatest tank battle that ever occurs on planet Earth. There are, I don't know, somewhere around 1,000 tanks on each side. I mean, I'm just picking a number, but just the fact that I know that about 700 tanks were destroyed on the German side and about 500 tanks destroyed on the Russian side, that should tell you right there. Say there's 500 tanks destroyed on the Russian side, but then you find out, well, that was only 50% of their tank force. Okay, so they had 1,000 tanks. Okay, in one battle. So this thing kicks off, believe it or not, on the 4th of July. And the Germans think it's strange that the Russians don't seem to be counterattacking. They just seem to be falling back, and attack after attack the Germans make over a period of several days, they realize we are just hitting line after line after line of Russians, and they're just waiting for us. And when they finally reach a point where they're wore down, sometime around July 9th or 10th, the Russians counterattack with all of their tanks and just pour in, and the Germans are overextended and the Germans are toast. They thought they had some secret weapons. They had a couple of new tank designs that they brought into this battle. But the reality was the Tiger tanks and the Panther tanks, the big ones, were still suffering from maintenance flaws, engine flaws, fuel leaks, all kinds of things. And they had another vehicle called the Elephant, and the Elephant was a massive tank destroyer. The problem is it didn't have any way of defending itself against anything except tanks, so the Russian infantry could just run right up to it and destroy it, which they would do. Around July, I want to say between the 16th and the 19th, Hitler finally canceled the order for the Battle of Kursk. And the reason that it's important is because for the last time, except for the Battle of the Bulge, the Germans try something like Blitzkrieg, and on the Russian front, it's an epic fail because the Russians already know what they're going to do. And it's the first time that the Russians really pick up the concept of Blitzkrieg, other than at Stalingrad, and use that as their standard way of fighting from that point on. So it's just the Russians are on the offensive from that time on. The Germans are on the defense from that time on. It's the last big attempt by the Germans on the Eastern Front to use their tanks and do something massive, and it totally doesn't work out. So, largest tank battle ever to occur on the planet, Battle of Kursk, July 1943. Tomorrow we'll see what's going, or it'd be next week. We'll see what's going on in the Pacific and wrap that up. All right, have a great day.